All right. So once again, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to whichever part of the world we are right now. I hope that everyone is keeping safe in this extraordinary time that we're experiencing. So our webinar for today is about disaster-proof education, planning for a disaster-proof education for your school. My name is Jen, and I'm joined by the CEO and founder of Cypher Learning. It's an e-learning company that's based in San Francisco in USA. So he will also be helping us today provide an insight on what we can do to make our education disaster proof. Just a little bit of a background about me. So I'm also an educator from the Philippines. I teach here in the university here in the Philippines, and currently I'm the director for e-learning integration in Cypher Learning. I've worked in the academe for more than 20 years. Please don't count my age. I will reveal the age later after the webinar if you're interested to know, because it says here 20 years of experience in education. So I'm also a teaching with technology trainer and have been advocating the use of technology in the classroom for quite a while now. And with me, our director, our CEO of Cypher Learning, Mr. Graham Glass, is the CEO and founder of Cypher Learning. He's also an author and he's also an educator. He used to teach in the University of Texas. I'll give you a little bit more of an introduction about him later. So I know that we are all experiencing, we're probably anxious about what's happening now in the world in this extraordinary time that we're experiencing. It's only been 3 months since 2020 starts, and yet a lot of things have already happened. We have witnessed a lot of, wouldn't say challenging, but let's call it an extraordinary occurrence in the world right now. There's been a lot of things going on in the different parts of the world. Here also in the Philippines, we've experienced very recently in January, there's a volcanic eruption in the country. There's flooding in Jakarta, there's bushfire in Australia, and probably a lot of other significant or challenging occurrences in the world. And right now, we're experiencing this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, which every sector is affected, including the education sector. And this is the very reason why we've decided that probably it's time for us to share with you a few things that we can do and how we can cope, especially the education sector can cope in this extraordinary time that we're experiencing right now. We all know that when disaster strikes, most schools will suspend their class. And right now, it's happening very, very fast all over the world. Classes are being suspended. And we know that when classes are suspended, it's a day without learning for students, a day without teaching for teachers. And usually, what happens when classes are suspended, we are somehow forced to do extra days of class, makeup classes. Like here in the Philippines, the disasters that we have experienced, I live in a country that's very near the equator. So I could probably say that our country is disaster prone. It's a disaster prone country wherein we experience a lot of natural calamities and natural disasters. We have typhoon almost 20 times a year on the average, we're visited by typhoon. We have earthquake, we have volcanic eruption, we have monsoon rain that causes massive flooding, severe flooding. Yes, we're blessed with natural disasters. Aside from that, we also experience sometimes regional armed conflicts. And we also have, I'm not sure if everyone is, or people will be happy to know that we have 13 to 18 non-working and non-school holidays, sometimes on the average. So all of these are causing disruption and suspension of classes. And when classes are suspended, we are required to make up for the lost instruction time. Extra school days, that means extra school days for the learners, extra school days for the teachers, and more often than not, especially for a Department of Education school or public school, some classes, or even in private school, some classes are extra class days are conducted on a Saturday, it's a weekend which is supposed to be spent with the family. But that cannot be avoided because I know that worldwide we really give so much value to education, and we don't want any of this calamity to hinder teaching and learning. Now, here are some of the challenges that we've experienced when doing makeup classes or extra class days. Number one, rescheduling of classes is very difficult because teachers must organize a common schedule with all of the students that's affected by cancellations to be gathered to attend the makeup class. This is very difficult for teachers, and probably most of you or all of us who are teachers that's in here right now experiences the same thing. Another challenge will be finding a classroom. Once we found the schedule, the next thing that we need to find is a classroom that fits to the schedule. And it's not very easy to do that, since, especially if a lot of teachers are also doing makeup classes. And then another challenge would be getting everyone to attend the makeup class. Some higher ed institution would probably not require every student to attend, but sometimes for basic education, attendance is mandatory. So getting everyone to attend the makeup class can be very challenging for teachers. You want to gather at least 100% of attendance during makeup classes, but sometimes it's not really possible to happen because of the conflict in schedule. So, and now we're seeing, again, what's happening right now, we're seeing how the education process is being disrupted because of what's happening now, because of this pandemic that's making everyone, every teacher and every student probably panic and overwhelmed and thinking of what's gonna happen now that classes has been suspended. But like, I'm not sure if some of you are seeing me in Facebook. I've been sharing tips about online learning, and one of the tips that I have given is to not panic, because there will always be a better solution to what's happening now, especially in the education sector, better solution than rescheduling classes. So, and since I am an educator who lives in a country that's a disaster prone, if I may use that word, over the years that we have experienced disasters disrupting classes here in the country where I live, here in the Philippines, I've been an advocate of the disaster-proof education. So what is disaster-proof education? Disaster-proof education is a proactive measure that makes teaching and learning continue even there are calamities, even if there are natural disasters happening, both natural and man-made. It is a measure that we can use to avoid taking extra days for makeup classes. It is a measure that we can use to be ready in a situation like what we are experiencing now. So, and there are many ways by which we can do this. There are many, with the presence of technology in education now, there are many things that we can do. There are many ways that we can do to make learning still happen anytime, anywhere. Digital tools for teaching and learning are now available to help us do that, to help us make learning happen even in the worst case scenario. One of those tools is a learning management system, which probably most of you, if not all, have heard of or have been using. So a learning management system allows a teacher or teachers to create and deliver content that can easily be accessed by learners or by students anytime, anywhere. It also allows you to monitor the student engagement and participation, assess their knowledge and track their performances, even outside of the four walls of their classroom. So that's what a learning management system can do. But aside from the technology, the right tool, we should also have
Buenas noches, les habla Julio.
We also have the right tool. We also need the right pedagogy for that. So a perfect formula for a disaster-proof education is the right tool plus the right pedagogy. And that's what we want to share with you also today. So over the years of experiencing this cancellation and disruption of classes because of natural disasters, there is a process that I have learned and I wanna share with you today. I call it the pie. It's not something that we eat, but this could also be something that like that to nourish us and help us think sometimes. All right. So a pie is an acronym that stands for plan, implement, and evaluate. So this is very important. Anything that we do or anything that we want to do, especially if in planning for a disaster-proof education, it's very important that we plan. So during the planning process, it's very important that for us to have a clear objectives. Ask ourselves what our goals are. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? This will help give you direction on what to do. It's also important that we assess the school's capability, know your school's technological and pedagogical capability to deliver and implement a remote teaching and learning. It is also very important that we identify barriers and constraints, and we need to consider the learner's access, the teacher's access to technology, and internet access at home. Because this is a very important component when we're doing remote teaching and learning. And then also we need to get to know our students. It is important to know how the students are learning, their learning style, so that we can develop the right approach. As I mentioned, it's the right tool, the right technology, and the right pedagogy. It was a perfect formula for a disaster-proof education. It is also very important, especially for the school administrator, to consider teacher readiness. Capacity building for teachers on the use of technology that aligns with pedagogy and content is very, very important. We must make sure that our teachers are ready to do e-learning or online teaching. And then during the implementation part, these are the things that are very important for us to consider. Content availability. We need to make sure that our content is readily available and accessible to the students, because this is what's gonna make everyone crazy. When they start accessing the platform or any digital platform where the content is hosted and they don't get to see it and they have difficulties accessing it, that's where the chaos happens. That's when the confusion happens. Where is it? Where can we find it? We cannot download it. So everyone starts to get anxious because they're not finding the things that they need to find. They're not finding the content that they need to find. So it also helps when we align our content with the technology and pedagogy that we're using. For example, if we're using blended learning, or if you're offering blended learning, we need to have the right learning management system that will support that modality of instruction or delivery of instruction. Using the right tool during implementation is also very important. We need to have a look at what digital tools you already use, you already have, or you want to use. Evaluate the potential to be used for remote learning, such as the school's learning management system. And here are some of the suggested guide questions that I have, that I want to share with you when choosing a learning management system. Ask yourselves, is the learning management easy to set up and implement? Does it offer a free trial? We have to make sure that when we use it, we can easily understand how it's used. We can easily set it up without the need for us to have a really deep dive training right away. Something that we can use right away is very, very important. You need to also ask if the provider of the learning management system offer a full support and assistance to users, because not everyone is as tech savvy as another teacher or another student. We need to make sure that there is someone. Support is very, very important when you're using a digital tool or a learning management system. We need to make sure that someone is there for us. Someone is there to help and support whoever is using that technology. And when you do need, you also need to ask yourself, what do you want and what are you trying to achieve when you're using a learning management system? Does it offer full support? What are the technological constraints and barriers between the users and the school? So those are also the things that we need to ask ourselves when choosing a learning management system. And then next is choose the right learning activities. Please remember that learning will be virtual and remote, and you want to make sure that the platform and its features can support these activities. We want to keep the learners as engaged as possible. We want to keep them not really glued into their computer and do all day studying, but we need to get their attention. We need to get them motivated to learn, and we need to make sure that they are engaged with the lessons that we are creating. So here are some of the recommended virtual activities that we can do when we do online learning, or when we're using a digital platform for learning. And I've also used this tools before. You can use forums or discussion forums where everyone can participate and share ideas and opinions about a particular topic. You can do debates where everyone can challenge each other's view. Wiki is also a good learning virtual activity. You can do online group activities. You can have online exams if you want, or online quiz. Web conferencing is also a really good virtual activity that you can do. If you want to keep your students more engaged, also you can do group chat. If you want to do synchronous delivery of the course, of the class, you can do group chat. There are also online free-form assessments or essay that you can provide the learners or ask them to do. And then lastly, evaluate for success. Once you've already started implementing your online learning or remote teaching and learning delivery, you need to make sure that you evaluate for success. I have 3 keywords for this: GMA, guide, monitor, and adjust. We need to guide the teachers and the students and other stakeholders, including parents, okay, on the process that we're doing and on the process that that's happening. How we need to make, especially the parents, we need to make them understand why we're doing online learning and what are the benefits of doing online learning. That's very, very important. Monitoring, not controlling, not policing. Monitoring, we just need to keep track of the progress, both of the teachers and the students, so that we know what needs to be adjusted in the next implementation. We need to develop appropriate evaluation tools. We also need to develop effective feedback systems. So like what I've mentioned earlier, support is very important when we're doing online learning, when we are implementing remote and virtual learning. You can create a help desk online, or make sure that the digital tool that you're using or your LMS has an online help desk that will provide support to teachers immediately when they need it, also with not only for teachers, but also for students. And then, of course, adjust. After the first phase of your implementation, after you've evaluated what's going on and what was happening in your remote teaching and learning process, please make sure that you make the necessary improvements as needed, upgrade, innovate, create. Please do not be scared to think outside of the box. Please do not be scared to change any process if you think that this is not working, because that's very, very important. Changing and adjusting doesn't necessarily mean you fail. It only means that you want to make things better. And if ever that you feel that what you are doing is failing and you fail with what you're doing, it doesn't mean that you have to stop doing it. You will receive, probably like right now, you will receive a lot of maybe complaints on what's going on, especially now that most schools are starting to do online learning. Complaints is not something that will stop us from continuing what we're doing. Complaints are something that we can use to make things better and to adjust. And it's very, very important for us to have that growth mindset. If you're new in online teaching, there will always be birth pains. That's normal, but it will go away. Everything will run smoothly as you progress in what you're doing. And also, if you think that something is not going right, just make the necessary adjustment needed, and everything will be okay. Now, before those are some of the tips that I can share with you. Now, I will reintroduce you our very special guest for today, the CEO and founder of Cypher Learning, Mr. Graham Glass. He's also a senior lecturer at the University of Texas. He's a social entrepreneur, and he's also a published author and speaker. Hi, Graham, are you there?
Hi, guys. Hi, Jen. Can you guys hear me okay? Can everyone hear me okay? I just want to make sure.
Yes,
okay,
loud and
great.
clear.
Okay, good. So I know that Jen's got a whole bunch of questions all
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Graham.
Okay, but I'd like to just chip in a few things, a few additional hints and tips from my own experience. As Jen mentioned, I used to teach computer science at the University of Texas at Dallas, and then I founded a professional training company prior to founding Cypher Learning. And here's what I found in terms of moving to online. I think the biggest shift you have to think about is moving from synchronous to asynchronous. And what I mean by that is when you're in a course, in a typical live environment, you're standing up there at your whiteboard or whatever it is you use, and there's a one-on-one real-time discussion between the instructor and the learners. And when you go online, you can do that. So you can say, hey, the only way that we're going to run classes is synchronously through web conferencing. But that's not very practical in a lot of cases. Like the probability that all the learners who are now at home running around doing their thing and the instructor being all together, all with live internet connections at the same time is quite low probability. So it's much easier if you as an instructor can shift to the asynchronous mindset. And what this means is you can no longer guarantee that you and the learner are going to be online at the same time. Now that definitely takes a bit of getting used to, but once you actually experiment with that shift and you master it, it's an incredibly enlightening experience. Now the way that people used to do that was write a book. So, you know, in my own experience, I used to teach at UT Dallas. I got really good at teaching, in my case, a subject called Unix. And every time I taught the same thing again and again, I remember thinking, if I could just put this all online and people could take it at their own pace, it would be amazing. But in those days, there really weren't very good learning platforms. So what you do is you write a book, which is like super slow, takes a year plus to do, but it is a form of asynchronous learning. You know, you write it all down, somebody buys your book, and then they read it, and you, the author, and the people who are reading it are not in the same room at the same time. But obviously, we can do a lot better now. So for example, you might create a course as a series of modules. You might decide that for whatever reason, those modules have to be taken in sequence because maybe they build upon each other. Or maybe you decide, hey, I'm going to allow the learners to flip around and do the modules in whatever order they want. And that's going to be based on whether they really are dependent or not. But when you do a module, you might have a module which has a video, which could be a video that you recorded, you know, in your home one night. You just take a 30-minute video or 15-minute video. You put your little video there. You might follow it up with some embedded PDFs, some Microsoft Word documents that you find, links to third-party resources, link to YouTube, you know, put all that into your learning management system. And then you might want to say, well, before I'm going to let you to go into the next module, you're going to take some kind of quiz and you have to get 80% to show your mastery before you go to the next level. So that kind of thing is actually very, very easy to do. And then that way, at least, you can be sleeping and your learner logs on at 3 in the morning because they're bored and they watch the video of you. They read the additional notes. They want to click ahead, but no, you're actually going to get them to jump a little hurdle, take a quiz, achieve a certain mastery before going on. Now, some people have been doing this already. They're called flipping the classroom, where you, instead of in the real-time classroom situations, you're actually delivering materials, you're actually working on projects, and at home you watch the video. So for those of you who have done flipped classrooms, this is, very familiar territory. For those of you who don't know, if you do this, the nice thing is not only can your learners take the course whenever they want to, but it also means that the next time you teach this course, you can actually benefit from all the materials that you have recorded and then stored into a learning management system. Another recommendation I would give, if you're into competency-based learning, is that you can tag the content with the individual competencies that it is teaching, and you can organize quizzes to test those competencies. This is not necessary for asynchronous delivery, but what it means as an instructor is that you and your learners can actually get feedback on what their individual strengths or weaknesses are, which sometimes is more revealing than simply, oh, I got to module 2 or module 3. So shifting out of the synchronous and asynchronous mindset is a pretty major thing. That's also why, when Jen was mentioning using forums, using your news feeds, it's really great. The student might see module 1, watch a video, get stuck on the quiz, go to the forum, say, hey, I've got stuck on such and such a problem. And then one of your fellow students 2 hours later might say, oh, I got stuck in the same problem and here's the solution. And you get an automatic notification, which is great. I didn't even have to wait for the teacher to wake up. One of my fellow students helped me out. So that's part of the big synchronous to asynchronous mind shift. I would say another thing is use of gamification. So as Jen mentioned, especially when people don't necessarily have to come to school anymore, you really want to keep them engaged. And so depending on your platform, you can set things up like when the student finishes module 1, automatically give them 50 points. When they achieve 100 points, they automatically achieve a badge level, and you can say, hey, congratulations, you just got to beginner mode or something like that. And so by using automation to deliver these kind of constant reinforcements, badges, points, certificates, or even the leaderboard concept where, hey, I'm actually doing the top in the class right now, I want to keep going and max out those points. We found those to be very effective in keeping people enthusiastic. It's a little drip of, compliments that they get. And it also can tap into their innate competitive spirit because they want to get the best badges and the best points. And I know quite a few of our customers in the Philippines have had very good experiences with using gamification delivered automatically based on automation rules to keep things going. So that's, I think, another really important thing. The last thing I'm going to mention is when it comes to scalability. We've got, one of our customers in the Philippines has over 80,000 students on our platform. And so when there's an incoming typhoon, they will actually use our platform as the means of mass communication. And fortunately, we're scalable enough that an admin can literally go, send a message to everyone, warning everyone, don't come now, there's a typhoon. And within 1 minute, our system has sent out 80,000 emails and notifications, which is, something that you really want to be able to count on. So just to recap, I do think that thinking asynchronously, once you get in that habit, it's not only going to help you through, offline in this kind of mode, but it's going to really help you to actually become a better educator when things go back to normal. I think that gamification, a little sprinkling of automation rules can really help out as well to keep people engaged. And I think scalability, so you can count on the system when, millions of people are online at the same time, is really useful. I do want to mention one other thing, because obviously we're a learning management system company, so that's the business that we're in. But I do want to mention that our Neo platform is actually completely free for up to 400 students with everything that we've talked about. Gamification, automation, competency-based learning, everything 100% free for schools up to 400 learners. So, this is part of our philanthropic effort. It's also good for marketing, but we really, as educators, we actually really do truly believe in making this kind of technology available for small schools around the world at no charge at all. So any of you who are listening to this that goes, wow, that's so good, but you know, I don't have any money, don't worry, you can just go to our site, neolms.com, and get completely free for up to 400 learners. That being said, now I'll hand you back to Jen, and she can go through a kind of a Q&A.
Thank you, Graham. That's very informative. I'm sure everyone, I can see some taking notes. That's going to be very helpful for us teachers now. Now, we are going to try and answer most of the questions that you have. We've already consolidated some of the questions. So there is a question here. It says here, there are many concerns about reaching the last mile students, meaning those who do not have access to devices and the internet. What options do we have to reach them, or what options do you have, or Cypher Learning has to be able to reach the students?
And that's a really good question. And it doesn't apply just to, you know, some developing nations or, you know, students who are in villages, but it also matters for like internet outages. Like in California, we had a whole bunch of power outages recently because of the fires, where literally you just can get internet access. So, so I would say that there's two things that we can do about that. The really big thing that we're going to do is in April, we're going to release a 100% offline mode for our native apps. So what that means is that if you download the Neo native app, which is available for iOS and for Android, then as long as you can connect to the internet briefly, it'll actually synchronize the content from the courses that you're taking and store it locally in your device. So that if you're cut off and you go home or whatever else, you can still watch the videos, read the content, still, you know, have access to all the learning materials. So that's coming out in April. We're actually in testing right now. I think the other thing that you can do is that in the case that internet access is slow or spotty, we've optimized our mobile apps so that they work great even in low bandwidth environments. So currently, low bandwidth environments coming in April, 100% offline with synchronization.
Thank you, Graham. That's good to hear. Offline mode is really something that we could use right now, especially in countries where internet connectivity is a challenge. Given that, there's another question here. How is Cypher Learning making sure that Neo is performing at its optimum level during this time where there is bigger volume of users? Because I think there are some connectivity issues right now that's going on.
So, I mean, the way that we deal with that is smart engineering. So one of the things that we've done over the years is heavily optimize our system in terms of its efficiency of usage and make it very, very easy to deal with peak loads, which sometimes involves scaling the system and adding more application servers, adding more job servers. And so, for example, you know, in the last couple of days, our site tripled in the amount of bandwidth. And right now, even after it's tripled, our servers are running at like 15% capacity. So, so it's a very reliable system. And one of the things I do want to mention is that one of the unusual things about Cypher Learning is we actually have 3 branded versions of our platform. So Neo is the branded version for schools and universities. Matrix is the branded version for businesses, and Indie is the branded version for individual students. And so, you know, we've got businesses, a lot of businesses are going more and more online now. It's not just schools and universities. But like I say, our engineering and DevOps teams have done a great job of making sure that we have tons of excess capacity, even at times like this.
All right, thank you for that, Graham. There's another question. I think this is also very important. If we are using an existing LMS, what would be the process of transferring to another LMS? How about the data privacy and data sharing concern?
Well, so firstly, in terms of actually moving content between LMSs, there are standards that allow you to do that. So the industry standard for example, importing and exporting a course is called Common Cartridge Format. And Neo supported that for both import and export for years. So as long as your existing LMS supports Common Cartridge Export, you can export from that and then import into Neo. And vice versa. We try to not to lock people in, so you can export out of Neo and go somewhere else. As far as other things like, you know, a list of your users, a list of your courses and that kind of thing, We also support industry standard comma separated value files. So as long as you can export a CSV version of all the accounts, you can pull them into Neo in a matter of minutes and have everything copied across. As far as data privacy goes, we support GDPR, which is the European pretty stringent data privacy laws. And we've supported that ever since GDPR became available. So we don't share our information with anyone. We don't do special back-end deals sharing our information with other people. We don't automatically put in Google cookies to track people. So we're very, very diligent about that. And we support all the GDPR mechanisms for getting people to agree to policies. We allow, depending on how you've set it up, people to export their own private data. So I think we've got a pretty comprehensive solution to that.
And I'd also like to add to that Cypher Learning is a global edtech center that can help you and your school when you want to transfer or migrate from your existing LMS to Neo LMS. We make sure that we provide that support to you.
Yeah, we've got a migration services team which has migrated tens of thousands of courses from other LMSs. Yeah.
Okay, I think this question is kind of very timely. Most schools are on reactive state right now than proactive, as this occurrence of COVID-19 comes unexpectedly. What can they do, or what advice can you give them to get started without being overwhelmed with the idea of online learning, especially I think for the first timers?
Yeah, well, part of it would be watch this webinar. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. A lot of it depends on your own familiarity with technology, your own experience in delivering things asynchronously. I think that, you know, one of the things that we've tried to do, at least in our platform, is make it as easy as possible to get started. So it's not like a typical LMS if you're used to some of the older LMSs. It's a lot more user-friendly, graphical, you know, children and adults love it, very graphical and tile-based. So part of it is just making the technology approachable, which is part one, and providing lots of samples. Part two is leaning on people, if you're not familiar with how to go asynchronous, and getting good experience advice. You know, one of the things that Jen mentioned is, yeah, this is our first time with a pandemic, of course, but it's not our first time with disaster-prone environments. We've done that for a long time. So we've got a lot of you know, senior experience in our EdTech team on how to actually deal with that kind of stuff. And we make our EdTech team available to, you know, all of our customers.
Okay, next question. There's a lot of questions coming in. I think we still have time. Do you provide free trainers training? I think I'm gonna answer this one. We do provide certain hours of free training for the teachers and for the trainers also. Yes, we do provide that. There's also another question, if there is an item analysis in the exam. Yes, there's also item analysis that the platform is capable of doing item analysis, especially for quizzes. This question, are there storage limits for the free version aside from 400 maximum users?
Yeah, no. So it's like unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth. So yeah, you don't have to worry about running out.
And then, oops, I lost that question. It says here, what percentage can be transferred in a migration process from other LMS to one of Cypher Learning platforms?
So that's primarily gated by what common cartridge format supports. So generally speaking, that'll be all of the actual HTML content, any quizzes that you've got, any videos that you have, PDFs, etc. And so, I mean, we've successfully migrated courses from Canvas and Blackboard and Moodle, and they appeared, you know, very similar. But obviously, there's no way to import, export platform-specific things. Like if you're using our gamification, CCF does not support any standard for exporting game rules and importing them into another platform, partly because most LMSs actually don't support automation-based gamification in the first place. But it's pretty decent.
Okay, there's a lot of questions coming. This one is very timely and very, very kind of like exactly what's happening now. How is the coronavirus affecting EdTech right now?
That's actually a great question. I did an interview about that yesterday with a guy in the UK. So I would say, and I don't want to sound like happy about this because obviously nobody likes this for us. I'm stuck in the house with my wife and kid. Not that that's bad, by the way. I mean, I like playing with my kid. But it has opened people's eyes to the fact that EdTech does serve a very valuable purpose. And it's more obvious now that people are actually having to do a lot of remote learning than it was before. And, you know, the one silver lining is that I think people going to this remote learning are going to get much better at asynchronous teaching. And once they've done that, I think that's actually going to make them more effective educators in general, where they will be able to convey their knowledge and engage students and encourage them without necessarily having to be in the same room at the same time. I also think once people start doing this and realizing, wow, I can actually upload video presentations from me and all these other things, that once they've done that, they're going to be able to reuse that semester after semester and make their lives a lot easier. When I was teaching at UT Dallas, that's what I did in the old-fashioned way. I created tons of notes the first 2 semesters. And after then, it was a breeze. And on the first day, it's like, okay, here's the entire semester's notes. I didn't have to write on the whiteboard anymore. I could spend all of my time just trying to inspire people and answer their questions.
Thank you, Graham. One more question here. What is or are the best features of Neo that differs from other leading LMSs?
Where do I begin? There's actually a lot. I would say user interface is really superb. I would say things like automation, gamification, competency-based learning for free plans, ad hoc reporting, you know, the list goes on. But those are the ones that come, you know, to mind right off the bat.
I'll just also like to add that support is also something that differentiates us from other companies. We want to make sure that we support our users, our teachers, and our students. We have offices where we do have local support also, and we believe that that's very, very important. We want to be as close as possible to the users and the teachers especially, and that's why we want to make sure that full support is being offered also by the company. All right, are you ready? Are you still up for a few more questions, Graham?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
All right. Here's another one. How do we deal with identity issues of the learners, meaning that registered learners do not ask other people to do the exams or quizzes for them?
Hi, everyone. By the way, this is my little toddler here. He just came to say hi. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi, Branson. How are you?
Branson. Hi, boy.
Hi. How are you?
And yeah, well, I'm giving him some asynchronous learning later on today. So as far as identity goes, there's several things that we've done. So one of the things that's very common is that people want to do things like various kinds of proctoring, where they want to make sure that if you take a quiz, that you're in a certain location, typically in a kind of a locked room environment. So we have assessment proctoring tools built directly into Neo. So you can lock it down based on a password, based on an IP address, etc. One of the things that we've found is the true identity ones, where you actually like biometrics and scanning your iris and all that kind of stuff, they're just cost prohibitive to almost everyone in the world. So there might be some very wealthy universities that can afford it, but for majority of people, you know, IP lockdown, that kind of thing is good enough. For people who worried about things like sharing sessions, like, you know, I'm online, but I'm going to give my account to somebody else and they can take the quiz for me. We have built-in features like preventing simultaneous login. So if more than one person is online at the same time, it automatically kicks the other one off. So people very quickly realize that sharing your user ID or password is really inconvenient because it keeps on kicking you off the system.
Okay, another question. Shouldn't there be a discount for paid versions for least developed countries, as we have to shut down our schools as a preventive measure?
We actually do. So you know, one of the things that's happened recently is that we have customers with you know, maybe a relatively small number of users on our premium plan, and they go, oh my gosh, you know, we thought we were doing a pilot, but now we need to have, you know, 10,000 learners online. Can you work with us? So yeah, our sales team has actually worked with quite a few people to provide kind of emergency discounts. So, you know, I mean, part of our company is we're all educators. We're very empathetic with what's going on in the world. And we do want to work with people, you know, around the world financially. So yes.
That's great news for everyone. Another question, for teachers who have difficulties with technology and English, any chance your video tutorials could be in Spanish that they will have to learn, but they are missing some tools?
Can I answer?
Yeah, that's a good
one?
question. So, I'll do one thing and then I'll pass it on to Yuri. So one nice thing about Sci4 Learning is that we have 15 locations around the world. And in those locations, everyone speaks the native language of whatever location they happen to be in. I know we've actually translated quite a lot of materials already into Spanish, but I'll pass over to Yuri to address that in more detail.
Definitivamente tenemos contenido en español, videos, material que podemos compartir con ustedes, capacitación. Hay varios maestros en Latinoamérica, en España y en otros lugares que han hecho eso. Podemos ayudarlos, solo contáctenos y con todo gusto los apoyamos. I'm sorry I spoke in Spanish, but it was more convenient for the question.
No problema, señor. Okay, hold on. Another question here. How do we address teachers who are resistant to shifting to LMS?
Or teaching who are what, sorry?
Teachers who are resistant to using a learning management system.
Well, this will be a good incentive for them right now, because if they want to keep on teaching, they're basically going to have to learn how to use some kind of system. But I would say, once again, I think a lot of people, especially if they've used an older LMS, which is like really hard to use, and they had a bad experience, you know, a lot of the time they're resistant. Like, I don't want to go through that pain again. I think generally, if they have a good experience, it'll open their eyes. And we've had enough customers through the years who have gone through that curve where they go, oh, you know, nobody wanted to use it. Now it's like, oh my goodness, they're all fans. They can't even imagine life without it. So, but I would say a lot of it is just giving them a good experience, and from that on, they'll become evangelists themselves.
And I'd also like to add that it's very important to, I have a three-step process for that: awareness, education, and reinforcement. We need to have, like, first make them aware of why they need to use an LMS, what is it, and how, and then the next thing is how are they going to use it, and then reinforcement is supporting them once they started using it. You can also do a buddy system, like help each other. Every day I do give online learning tips, and one of the tips I gave yesterday is help each other. Those who are already using the learning management system, show them how you're using it, be a model for them, and then kind of like evangelizing them on how to use it. Don't force feed them, because the moment you start force feeding the teachers and the students to use any tool, resistance will be even much stronger. But I think right now Graham is right that, well, we don't have a choice right now, but to start learning it because we need it right now. All right. Another question. A few, maybe 2-3 more questions before we end. What strategies can school leaders implement to make it easier for teachers to quickly adjust to online learning? Graham, you're muted. Hold on, Graham, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Branson just having a meltdown in my office right now. So he's just on his way out. So could you repeat the question again?
Okay. What strategies can school leaders implement to make it easier for teachers to quickly adjust to online learning? It's more like what can school administrator do so that their teachers can quickly adjust to online learning, especially now that everything happens so abruptly.
Oh, I see. I mean, I would say one thing is that, especially if either the administrator themselves or one of their teachers has experience in e-learning, they can actually get an environment set up right away. so they can make onboarding very, very fast for all the teachers. They can also, do little video conferences like train the trainer kind of things. So if you find an evangelist, because I know Jen is a very popular and successful evangelist, once you get the ball rolling and you have at least one teacher, then you can help to onboard everybody else and do train the trainer sessions. So I would say that's the number one thing that I would recommend.
Okay, thank you so much, Graham. We've run out of time already, but please, okay, just one last to cap this webinar, because there are a lot of questions. So what advice can you give those schools who have not started or are reluctant to start looking into e-learning or using a digital platform to address class disturbances?
That's actually a fairly similar question to the last one. I would say, if an administrator or someone is, interested, then, a company like ours, we can give a very nice initial presentation to, here are the benefits, here's what it actually looks like, work with their teachers. These days it would be obviously a distance session. It wouldn't be in person, although we have done that. Because it's all about just, if they can see it and they can have a little experience, then they're going to go, oh, that just makes total sense. And I'm saying that as an educator, not just some CEO guy who's like clueless about education. So I think just getting people exposed to it, having a good initial experience, that's really the main thing to get things started.
That's a good advice.
Yeah.
So
and
thank you, Graham.
I would say that's just finishing up. That is why we've got the Neo completely free plan, unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth, state-of-the-art automation, state-of-the-art gamification, state-of-the-art competency-based learning, all completely free for up to 400 users. That's one of our ways to allow people to quickly get started.
All right. So don't worry, but because those questions that we were not able to address now, we have it recorded. We have the questions, and we will try to address those questions in an email. So I just want to add a few practical tips to what Graham has already mentioned. He mentioned a synchronous session. Please do a synchronous session. Online learning does not always have to be synchronously done, because it's going to make us go crazy. Number two is, do not overwhelm your students with too many online assignments and activities. Give them one activity, one assignment at a time, because if we give them too much, that will also overwhelm us teachers in checking all of those assignments. It happened to me a lot of times where I have 300 assessments to check. Third is, don't panic. Upload lessons and activities one day at a time. The lockdown to some countries will last for 1 month or 2 months, so we have enough time. Sharing is caring. Share lessons and activities that are common to teachers. Neo LMS has a template feature where you can create templates of courses that can be shared to other teachers. Help each other is very important. Have an open communication line where teachers and students can communicate with each other. Reach out to support forum if needed. And of course, ranting and complaints, it never helps, but sometimes, I know that it can't be avoided, but always know that there are support that's ready for you. Teachers are here for you. We are here for you. Lastly, disaster-proof education for everyone. We know that building a disaster-proof education can be very challenging, but it can be done if we prepare and if we embrace a growth mindset. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope that we were able to help you we were able to share some good insights with you. Let's continue communicating with each other. Send us an email. Our email. Please feel free to ask questions even after this session via email, and we will try to answer that as much as possible. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe.
I would just like to personally thank Jen for doing a really great job of organizing and planning the webinar. And sincerely from Cypher Learning, I'm really glad that everyone was able to attend this webinar. I hope it was useful for you.
And also thank you to the entire Cypher Learning team, marketing, edtech team, Yuri, and the rest of the teammates that we have. Thank you, Graham, for giving us the time today. It's been very informative. It's gonna help us a lot. Thank you also to all of you here. Gracias. Take care, everyone. Good morning, good night, and good afternoon to everyone. Bye.